Before we move on to more advanced programming, we ought to cover the rest of the things on the green menu. So I'm going to make a new project here. It's a program. We're going to open it. I'm going to close the content editor. And we're going to talk about the rest of the blocks down here. So the first two blocks here are just controlling a single motor at a time. You may recall that move steering controlled two motors, like B and C in this particular case. And it's doing a lot of fancy stuff behind the scenes to keep those motors going at the right speed and making a robot go straight and making it predictable and so on. These two just control the motor. It's not doing anything fancy. So you can tell a motor to go for a certain number of degrees or rotations and tell it how much power to use and how long to do that and whether it brakes or coasts at the end. This will all look completely familiar from when we were doing move steering in the first exercise. And you just use the medium motor one if you're controlling the medium motor and the large motor one if you're using the large motor. So you could control, if we wanted to make the robot go straight, you could come along here and we'll make this one the B motor and we'll make this one the C motor. If you tell it to do, in this case, on for one rotation, it's first going to make this motor start turning for one rotation. So the robot itself will turn because one motor is stopped and the other one is turning. And then it'll go on to this one and do the same thing, except it'll make the other motor turn, so it's going to turn the whole robot the opposite direction. It's probably not what you wanted to do. If instead what you intended was for B and C to both run, that's what these on and offs are about. So on will tell the motor to turn on, but then go to the next block. And so here we're turning on the B motor, and then we're going to turn on the C motor for one rotation because we're set to one rotation here. So this will have the effect of more or less making the whole robot rather, go forward for one rotation. It won't be as accurate as move steering would have been down here because move steering is watching the sensors inside both of those motors and trying to keep them both turning exactly the same speed. This one's not being that smart. It just turns on the B, then it turns on the C, and goes for one rotation, and then we're on to the rest of the program. But there might be a case where you want to do that, and if that's your bag, then that's what on and off is for. It doesn't wait for anything to complete. It just goes on to the next block. We've already talked a lot about move steering in the other tutorial, so let's go on to move tank. Move tank kind of does in one block what I just did here in two. It lets you individually control the power for each motor. So if you wanted some kind of special turn that was going at some really precise amount here, then this is going to make one motor go in backwards at minus 21 power. So it's going to turn backwards kind of slow. And then the other one is going to go forward at 78 power, pretty fast. And it's going to do it for, in this case, one rotation. This isn't doing all the fancy programming, though, in terms of keeping the robot going straight. So usually you won't use this block. It's there for more advanced programming because you can wire things into these values later on. For now, I would suggest just ignoring it. It's just easy to get it confused because there's two blocks here that look like they're doing pretty much the same thing. For where we are right now, always just use move steering unless you're controlling like an arm motor or some other third motor on your robot, in which case you'd use the medium or large motor blocks here. Now there's more fun in the last three blocks. So the display block lets you control the display of the EV3. And it'll do shapes and it'll do text. Probably the most fun for right now is image though. And that lets you put different images up on the screen of the EV3. So you would think that you would double click on this or something to choose the image, but the way these blocks work is you select it and then you choose the file to display up here. So we'll go ahead and click, and then your EV3 comes with a lot of different things here. I'm going to go into expressions and have a big smile. So that's what's going to show up on the screen of my EV3. Now, if you ever want to see what big smile looks like, that's what this little block's about here. You can click it and it'll show you whatever it's set to. Now, if I were to run this program, you would think that you would see a big smile on the screen. And indeed, it will show a big smile, but it will only show it for like 1,000th of a second, because the program is going to start, it's going to display the big smile, and then the program is going to end. When it ends, it clears the display, and that'll be the end of it. And so you'll think that nothing is really happening. So if you really wanted to see this happen, then I'll show you one block over here in the orange section, and that's the time delay or the wait block. So we'll go ahead and drag that up here. Now if I were to run this program, it's going to start, it's going to show big smile, and then it's going to wait. And it's going to wait for how long? Whatever it's set to here. So in this case, it's set to 1 second. I could go and type 10 seconds there. So now I've got a really happy robot. It's going to display a smile for 10 seconds. So let's go back here to the green box. The next thing on the list is sound. Sound is kind of like display. It plays whatever you've selected in here. And you can either play a tone of a certain frequency. You can play a note, like a piano key. In this case, it's an A5. Or you can play a file. And the file is really probably the most fun right now. And it works the same way. I've selected play file, come on up here, select the file name, and there's a lot of different files up here. So maybe we'll go in, say, Bravo. That'll say Bravo every time it gets to that part in the program. And I could put a time delay here if I wanted to smile big, say Bravo, and then wait for 10 seconds in this case. These other parameters here just control the volume. And the next one's a little bit not obvious. Wait for completion will make the program stop and wait for this to be said and then move on. Play once will play it, but while it's saying it, it'll continue on to the next blocks. You might have other moves or other thing going on here. And repeat will do it over and over and over. The last is the brick status light. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but this lets you control the lights that are on the front of the EV3. You may have noticed that it kind of flashes when you start the program running. Well, you can change all that. You can have it be on, or you can have it be off, and you can have it be 3 different colors, and you can tell it to flash or not. So you can go ahead and play with these commands if you want, and you can go ahead and use this wait command if you don't want the program to end and stop doing whatever it is you told it to do. If you think you got all this, then you can just move straight on to the next tutorial.